So you guys probably actually noticed when I put in this stuff, the perlite, it fumed up quite a bit. Now that is the stuff you don't want to actually get into your lungs. So don't breathe in. As you saw, I stood to the one side and blew it across instead. And even now, I don't want to aggressively turn this so that the fumes come up. So I'm doing it nice and slow. And what's happened is, because I've got some wet moisture in here with cocoa core or peat core. So you can use peat core or cocoa core. Both of them work perfectly fine. I just find peat core is a bit cheaper, but with you it might be different. And I just mix it in slowly so that all the fumes, all the powders get wet, so that I don't have to worry about getting it into my lungs and stuff like that. Though I'm still very careful, there's less likeliness of it being still powdery enough to float in the air and get into your lungs. And what you also want to do is, if you have any big chunks, you just want to try and mush them out. The sand I can understand, but if it's the core, you want to actually make that as broken down as much as you can. As you can see, like this big chunk. Yeah, the less chunky it is, obviously the more spread you have and the more mixture you get in. So yeah, you get the point. And you'll see as I note that there's not much more powder coming out, I'll become a bit more aggressive. But in the beginning, obviously, you just want to be a bit careful. And you want to mix the stuff a hell of a lot. You want to make sure that it's evenly mixed. Not one side is more white perlite and the other side is more compost, or the middle is not mixed very well with only compost and sand. Otherwise it's just not going to work. But as you can see, I'm only probably a third of the way, but it's light. That's probably add a little bit more sand myself personally, but this is fluffy, light stuff. And if it's light in your hands for the roots, which are normally used to hard soil, it will easily go down. Now you see this side here has got more perlite, so I haven't done my job well enough. So this is the kind of thing you have to just be aware of. And it's a real balancing act when it comes to making this kind of stuff, because it's up to you as well as the individual. Because there's a lot of people who have a strict ratio of 1:1, 1:3, so on. Like I said, with the compost and the sand. Me, I'm more of a person who feels it out, sees what I'm going to be using it for. For instance, if I'm going to be only doing seedlings, I probably want more of a compost. Lots more nutrients, because they will need it in order to grow big and strong and not have shoots instead of flowers growing on the, or actually leaves. Not having long stems instead of leaves and that kind of stuff. But if you're doing already stabilized plants or actual seedlings, you can then kind of say, okay, fine, I'll use more sand than compost, doing back to the 1:1. So like for instance, from seed you're doing 1.5 compost to 0.5 soil, whereas if you're doing seedlings which are already grown, you can do the 1:1 ratio. So it's really up to what you are going to be using it for. Because realize, even after, shall we say, 6 months, because you put a lot of compost into this, that compost will be used up. So you're going to need to put more compost back on top of your plants to ensure that they have the nutrients that they need. So that's just something to remember and to keep in mind when you're actually making your mix. So as you can see now, I'm getting to the point where everything's quite well mixed. Okay. Now you will probably find somewhere deep down there might be some more mixing that he's done. And it's quite simple, as you can see. I'll just remix it. It doesn't take long. And then from here, it's quite nice. You just have whatever container you want, and you throw it in. Water it up. If you don't have holes at the bottom, just remember the amount of water you put in, so it doesn't, drench itself, and the roots get wet, and your seeds get wet. Because if your seeds get wet, they're gonna rot. Okay, you just want it nice and moist or damp. And as you can see, there's some more. And make sure that if you do have holes, you're checking your plants every other day. Put more water in. Make sure that if it's in the sun, because what you would want to do is in the first couple of days, maybe the first week, wherever you put it, and especially your climate, if you have more sun, this will evaporate more, and it will draw more at night time, so that it restabilizes the top surface, and then basically your water will run out quicker. That's in a case of actually both drained and non-drained containers, because the drained one will just obviously have the water going out, the excess water, and then basically how this will pull water from the bottom of the bucket, from the soil that is at the bottom. So then you will have a lot more drying out throughout the bucket faster. Whereas if you actually have a sealed one, put a bit of water in the bottom, it will take the extra water from the bottom, and then only after that, say, it takes 2 days for it to dry out. So that means your bottom half is still drenched with water, the top section dries out, it takes the extra water during the night, restabilizes itself, dries out again. That therefore takes from the soil at the bottom now, not the drenched water left behind, and it takes it to the top to balance it out, and then your entire system dries out again. So you must just be aware of that as well. Direct sunlight will cause more water requirements, how often to water this kind of stuff, and it's very easy to know. Just put your hands in or a finger in and just see, is it damp, moist, and also remember which kind of plant you have, because let's say for instance cucumbers, it requires a lot of water. Mint as well requires a decent amount of water. They like their water quite a bit. Let's say aloe vera, it doesn't require as much, so you wouldn't water it too much. So just remember that is important to take into account even when using your own potting mix. Alright, so that's quite simple. In the next video I'm going to show you guys basically how I do my potting. I choose almost anything. I've got pots, I've got milk jugs and all sorts, but you'll see more of that in the next video. Hope you found this actually useful, that you actually learned something. Especially I hope you actually take account of the perlite, the health factor of it, and obviously your compost and sand mix. So thanks for watching, guys.